Adapting Minolta lenses on Fuji cameras on NP₃. Hi there, welcome to the National Parks Photography Program. Today I'm going to be talking about using adapters to use old lenses on new cameras. Before I get to that, this is going to be my third Fuji related review in a row and my fourth overall. So if you want to check out the previous videos, I have one on the XT1, I have one on the XE1, and I also have one about some of my favorite Fuji lenses. So take a look and check those out if you want to learn more about the cameras and the native lenses for the Fuji X Series. So today I'm going to be talking about using a couple of different adapters to mount legacy lenses onto Fuji cameras. Now I use Minolta MD lenses, but you can use one of the strengths of this is you can use a whole range of different lenses on different cameras. So you know, Canon lenses, a lot of people do really great things with Canon lenses or old Nikon lenses or old Olympus lenses, whatever. And you can also get adapters that will work with basically any mirrorless camera. So whether that's the Fuji X Series or the Micro Four Thirds cameras or the Sony E-mount cameras, companies will make different adapters to account for all of those different lens and camera body combinations. So it's something that's kind of become a big deal for a lot of photographers and allows people to use things in a way that they hadn't been able to until recently. So getting into it, what I'm going to do first is talk about a couple of different adapters and a couple of different types of adapters. I will run through some of the notable Minolta lenses I use, and then I'll finish up with my final thoughts on using these adapted lenses. So the first adapter I have here is from Fotodiox, and this is pretty simple. It's just a tube that has the Fuji X mount on the back and a mount for the Minolta MD MC line on the front. It's very reasonably priced and really solid metal build and really nice to use. So well worth it right there. So moving beyond the Fotodiox adapter, we have things like this, and this is from a company called Metabones, and it's the Speed Booster is their name for it. And so the width is the same as the Fotodiox, but this one has glass in it. It has a few different lens elements, and it's a focal reducer. And this is something that's fairly new to photography. But there's been focal reducers in, for people who use telescopes and in astronomy for a long time. Along with that, you get an increase in brightness. So that's why they call it a speed booster. It's making the lens effectively a faster lens. That's the two real advantages of this. Is one, it returns the lenses to very close to their native focal length, but it also gives you that extra light gathering ability or effective light gathering ability. So it's a pretty cool thing. There are a couple of other companies making them. Most notably, there's a Chinese outfit, and they produce something called Lens Turbo. And in terms of reputation, I haven't used it. The reputation of those is that they're okay, but the quality, the image quality is a little bit lower than with the Speed Booster. And then Metabones has come out with a Speed Booster Ultra, which addresses a couple of image quality issues that I'll talk about later on in the video. So moving on from that introduction to what the different adapters you can use, I'm going to talk specifically about my Minolta MD lenses. And so I'll start here with, this is the 24 2.8. And so Minolta, they were making these lenses for 40 years, from the 50s when they were called MC all the way through into for sure the 80s. I think they may have still been producing some of these lenses into the 90s. I'm not positive about that. But when they switched from manual focus to autofocus, the mount changed, and then Sony bought Minolta out, and so the newer Sony A-mount cameras are compatible with the later autofocus Minolta lenses. But that kind of left these manual focus lenses without a home, so to speak, unless you were buying a old Minolta manual focus film camera. So, but the thing is, especially the primes, by the 80s, Coatings were pretty good, and lens quality for prime lenses was really strong. So you're still getting outstanding image quality, I find, in general terms. But maybe not quite that last little percentage. So you're not going to equal what Fuji's modern X Series primes can do with an adapted lens, but you're still going to get really good images, and it's just a fun way to shoot. So talking about this 24, so this is kind of the end of normal wide angle before you get into ultra wide. One of the things I like about the MD series of lenses is I like getting the hoods for them, and they have a nice groove on the edge of the lens barrel, so you can easily clip a hood onto them. If you go into the older lenses, such as the MD Roker X or the MC lenses, they'll have to have screw-on hoods, and I just don't like that as well. MD are a little bit lighter, but there's a little bit more plastic in them. But the build quality is still really good. It's not quite as high as maybe the previous generation of lenses. There's a lot of people who really like to collect the MD Roker X lenses because there's a little more metal to them. They're a little bigger. And there's not much change in image quality, but I actually like the compactness of these. The action on the focus ring of all of these is just excellent. They're really solid feeling. Still some metal parts, metal, bayonet mounts on the back. So really quality things. And this 24 millimeters in particular, especially on film, was one of the stars of the Minolta MD lineup. It's an outstanding lens optically. Using it on the Fuji cameras, because of the wide angle and sort of all the gymnastics that the adapters are having to do with the light coming out of the back of them, you get sort of a little softer performance than some of the other lenses, and a little more issues with corner softness and vignetting and things like that. So it's not bad in most, especially if you stop down a couple stops, in most settings. In the real world, you're not really noticing any problems, but it is something worth noting that adapting wide-angle lenses tends to work less well than adapting telephoto lenses. Moving on from there, I have a 35 f2.8, and so this is it's still a wide angle, but already the performance has improved over the 24 when I'm using it on the Fuji cameras. I think on film, the 24 was probably a little better performer, but adapting this one, this is starting to get towards the level of my Fuji zoom lenses that I have. So, really nice performer there. This is a 51.4, and by now we're at a standard focal length, and it is just outstanding with the Metabones adapter or the Fotodiox adapter. Very sharp images, especially in the center. It's a 1.4, so with the Metabones adapter, you're gathering light like it's a 50 f1, which is a pretty incredible thing. And f1.4 for shallow depth of field is still a very good focal length. So really outstanding performer and really good value even amongst these. Minolta made a 1.2, so a half a stop faster lens, but because that is sort of the best one on the used market, it's the one that commands the highest price, and so you could get these 1.4, 50 millimeter 1.4s for a very good deal. I also have a 50 millimeter macro, and this one is really nice and sharp, and actually losing your autofocus for macro work isn't even a big deal. You usually manual focus that anyway. So this is an excellent lens to have in the kit. This is an 85 millimeter f2 from Minolta, and like the 24, this is one of the ones in my film days that was one of the real stars for me. The difference is moving into the digital age, whereas the 24 suffers a little bit from the effects of the adapters. This 85 is just astoundingly sharp. It's better than my Fuji zooms. I'm sure it's not as good as a similar focal length Fuji prime, which would be extraordinarily outstanding. but you're getting really, really sharp images out of this. And it's just beautiful to use. It's a good size. I mean, something this big, even with the adapter, it makes it, that big, isn't huge for, 85 millimeter at f2. The hood for this one, the other ones are plastic. This has a nice metal hood. Everything about it is just real quality and a real treat to use. So probably, I think, in digital terms, this is the star of the show, the 85 f2. Quickly, I have a 135 2.8. This does extremely well on the digital cameras, on my Fuji cameras. Built-in hood. You're getting, with the adapter, you're getting 135 f2 type of performance and something that's really compact. And the image quality, this is almost, I feel, a better performer on the Fuji digital cameras than I remember it being on the film cameras, the Minolta film cameras. I suppose that can't literally be true because you're adding glass to the works, but it is something I enjoy using. And then finally, I have, this is a Toque, so it's not a native Minolta, but it's an MD mount. And this is a 100 to 300 f4. And this was Toque's top of the line series. So it was ATX series. And so, this can be with the Fotodiox. You get with the crop factor, it's like a 150 to 450 f4, and then with the Metabones, a 100 to 300 f2.8. So I will say quickly, manual focusing. So this is, I've tried to use this on wildlife, things like that. I think it kind of is the best performer when it's with the Fotodiox, because I like it for the extra reach, the effective 400. But it's just really hard to stay in focus on a moving animal, even with some of the great focus aids that the XT1 has. It's very difficult. I've gotten some decent shots with it, but in use, it's a trick to focus. The quality when you lock in is pretty decent, but it's just a trick to use. So having talked about the adapters and the different lenses that I use it with, I'll give you some of my overall impressions about using these adapters. First, with the Fotodiox, you're still having the crop factor of the sensor. So, your 24 is a 36, your 50 is a 75, and so on. And so that makes shooting wide angles, you're not going to get a real wide angle. 36 is, a moderate wide angle, but that's about as good as you can do, because with these Minolta lenses, you can get wider primes, but you're starting to see the image quality really suffer. But it works pretty well, and when you get to the telephotos, you can really start doing some interesting things with the Fotodiox adapter. And a lot of the lenses, because their center performance is better than their corner performance anyway, cutting out that center of the image circle with the smaller sensor, you're still getting pretty good image quality, and it's worthwhile. Using the Metabones adapter, now you're getting essentially the focal length that the lenses were, or the field of view that the lenses were intended to have. So that's very nice. Like I said, at wide angles, it's a little bit of a trick. But from standard on into the telephoto range, you're just getting very, very outstanding image quality, even from these 35-year-old lenses or whatever they are. So a real treat to use. The other thing that's different about using these is obviously you're using them as manual focus lenses. That's what they are. But compared to using the same lenses on the old film cameras or using modern lenses on a digital camera, where the lens is always kept as you're focusing wide open, and then as you press the shutter, it stops down to the aperture you've selected and shoots. These ones, you have to stop them down ahead of time. So, if you tried to do that with a film camera, the image would get very dark. But with a mirrorless camera and an electronic viewfinder, the viewfinder will gain up to compensate for the aperture getting smaller. So you still have a bright image in the viewfinder when you're using these lenses. The advantage that gives you with that viewfinder gaining up is you're seeing the live depth of field in through the viewfinder. So as you stop the lens down, if you want to zoom into 100% on the electronic viewfinder, or use some of the focusing tools in there, you're seeing in real time what the depth of field is because the lens is stopped down as you're looking through the viewfinder. So I actually find that to be a really great way to work. I like being able to see in the viewfinder right away in real time what the more closely what the output is going to be. So that's actually an advantage. A disadvantage is the Metabones adapter does in the very corners, I'd say about the last 10%, maybe even less than that, of the frame into the corners. There's a real fall off in terms of sharpness. And that's helped somewhat by stopping down, but it is something you're going to find with these lenses. Most of the time that's not the important part of the image, and it's not so awful that you're going to get a result back and find it to be unusable or anything like this. But it is something to note. You don't get that as high of corner sharpness as the lenses had back in the film days or with a modern lens designed for a digital camera. I mentioned earlier that Metabones has come out with a Speed Booster Ultra, and I haven't tried that personally, but that's one of the things that was designed to improve upon, was to have better corner sharpness and less light fall off. It's a difficult thing they're doing, bending the light all these different ways to try to get that focal reduction and still get good image quality. So it's one of the trade-offs to be aware of. But overall, I just find this to be a real, these sorts of adapters and these old lenses to be a real pleasure to use. It's kind of, if you watch back to my video about using the native Fuji zoom lenses that I have, and they're wonderful things. And so normally for going out on hikes and things like that, they suit my needs absolutely perfectly. But sometimes, especially in urban environments, or if I'm doing a portrait or anything like that, I might decide, I'd like to shoot with prime lenses. And this was a sort of very affordable way. I mean, you're going to get a whole kit of these for about the same as what one of the high-end Fuji lenses might cost. So, there's a really good value proposition with these. Like I said, the build on them is so nice that they're a real pleasure to use. The live depth of field preview, because of stopping down the lenses, is something that I actually enjoy. So it's just a different way to work, and it's one that I've really enjoyed in the times that I've used it. And in fact, with that corner issue and things like that, I did a series of images in downtown Green Bay here where I just shot them all as squares, and so it just took the corners right out of the equation. And I was just extremely pleased with the results I got. They're very sharp images, they print really well, and it was great fun to take them. So there's just real advantages to using these adapted lenses. And like I said, you don't have to stick to one type. So if you like doing this, you can go get a few different adapters, and you can, this is the best of the Canon lenses. And some of the Canon lenses will even autofocus, not well, but you can get adapters that will allow autofocus and aperture stop down and things like that electronically. You can find the best Nikon lenses, old Olympus OM lenses. So there's just this great variety of things out there that you can pick and choose from. And especially with, something like this, you're paying, $20 or, Fotodiox adapters aren't expensive. Some of the Metabones ones get up into the hundreds of dollars, especially for the ones with Canon autofocus abilities. But it's a really neat way to shoot. It allows me to use these old lenses that I love to have in a whole new way. I never thought I'd be able to use them at close to their field of view ever again once digital came out, but here we are. Either with, if you have a Sony full frame E-mount camera, you don't even need a Metabones. Some different issues that, especially with wide angles on those, but they'll work. And then even on the APS-C sized sensors, you're basically getting a full frame equivalent field of view out of these old lenses. So I really recommend them. I think they're a joy to use, and it's just a ton of fun. So that's my video for today. I hope you like it and you give it a thumbs up and that it's been useful to you if you're looking at adapting lenses and to mirrorless cameras, that hopefully you've learned something today. If you'd like to see more videos about the national parks and photography in the national parks, make sure to subscribe to this channel. I can't speak to every adapter and every lens, but if you have any questions specific to the things I've talked about in this video, the Minolta lenses, the Metabones speed booster, or the Fotodiox adapter, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer those for you. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.